Good evening, this is Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Rajdan. Tonight it is the single biggest story that is confronting this country, the state of the economy. Growth is at a 3-year low at 5.7%, something even the most die-hard supporters of the government say is too low and needs to be fixed. And where are the jobs? That is the key question for most folks, as new data shows that creation of jobs has also shown a sharp decline. Many economists believe a combination of demonetization and the GST implementation has only added to the problem. Others don't think that demonetization was such a big factor. Just last week, former Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha went public with scathing criticism of the way the economy is being handled. He says he doesn't believe it will be fixed by 2019, in time for the next general election. Well, how can the economy be fixed? Joining us on the program tonight, a man who has worn many hats, former Union Minister in the previous NDA government, a former editor and economist, Arun Shouri. Mr. Shouri, thank you for coming in this evening. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Let me first ask you about the overall state of the economy. The growth rate is at 5.7%, which even Arun Jaitley was forced to admit was something of a concern to him. How worried are you when you look at the numbers? Do you think it can turn around soon?
No, of course, you see, it is, as Mr. Yashwant Sinha pointed out and Mr. Chidambaram has been pointing out, 5.7 really means 3.7 on the old series. So even this figure is, is a figure for complacency that the government has manufactured. And I certainly feel it's not just the figure; it is that the policies which ought to be implemented and ought to be implemented well, like GST, are being completely fumbled. You're fumbling with the ball all the time. And you were saying that some people still think about demonetization, that it was not such a bad thing and so on, or that it's not contributed to this. Actually, in my view, as we had talked at that time, it has been the largest ever anywhere money laundering scheme, entirely conceived by the government, entirely implemented by the government, entirely acclaimed by the government. You're saying
demonetization is a money laundering scheme?
Money laundering scheme, because everybody who had black money has converted it into white through the banks, by the government. So what else was it? And when you see figures that the small and medium enterprises on the Reserve Bank survey show that the sales have dropped by 58%. They are the largest, they are the persons, everybody is saying they are the ones that have been hit the most. And the Reserve Bank survey also says of the 726 firms that they surveyed, that their their earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, etc., have fallen by 122%. So that's not relatable to demonetization.
So you think demonetization has been the single biggest contributor to this?
Yes, it has been one of the biggest idiotic jolts.
Idiotic jolts.
Because if there were, let's say, a war, and you are fighting a righteous war, and that dislocates the economy, okay, no problem. But yahan to apne bas kulhadi marna hai.
So let me ask you though, that there are those, for instance, on the GST implementation, who say that this was expected, there was upheaval that was expected because you had a new tax regime coming into place, and it will sort itself out in a matter of a month or two. You don't think so?
Nidhi, even cancer, you have spontaneous remission sometimes. That does not, that's no what you call, no good shit to the government. After all, many people had been warning that this is a very poorly conceived GST. My friend Arvind Datar, the lawyer, he had been writing again and again, he had been advising the government on this. Similarly, it was, can you imagine a situation in which the rules are amended within 3 months 7 times? And you can't even count the number of notifications. And each time the thing is amended, the whole software has to be changed. And if you ask the Infosys people in private, they will tell you that it is at the 11th hour we were told what the shape of this thing is going to be. Is that the way to implement a reform? And it is the poor fellows, they have to fill in 36 forms a year.
Is GST bad or its implementation bad, according to you?
No, of course, GST, everybody would say that India should be a common market.
It's how we've done it.
It's how we have done it, and the great acclaim. This event management of GST is one of the things which is causing the problems.
What do you mean by that, when you say event management of GST?
Yeah, look at it. I mean, it's a tax reform. To put a tax reform at par with the independence of India. That is a tryst with destiny, second tryst, midnight session of Parliament, a tax reform. That is vulgar. Event management carried to the point of vulgarity. So, idea, naturally everybody says you should have a common market, and in a sense the country has been moving step by step towards these things, towards rationalization, towards cooperation with the states, and you suddenly hurry up a pregnancy.
But Mr. Shouri, there are those economists who argue, even now, that as far as structural reforms are concerned, whether it's on infrastructure and other reforms, that the Modi government has done more in the last 3 years than previous governments have done for many years, and that these are temporary blips in the horizon. Do you think that there is any truth in that?
Yes. So let's take some examples, specific examples.
On infrastructure, for example.
Well, it's a continuation of the reforms that were taking place. For instance, the private-public partnership was or was not working, and Mr. Gadkari has attended to the flaws in that partnership and said, okay, now we will tweak this in this way. I mean, isn't that the normal job of a government? That's just the normal job. If for that also you require wah-wah, it's a very strange concept of government.
So are you actually worried about, like Yashwant Sinha said in his column, he doesn't believe things will be okay by 2019. I mean, we're looking at that because of the general election, but do you agree with that? Do you think that it will be a very long-term slowdown in the economy?
Well, we don't know about those things, but the problem is not about the economy, because it can be buffeted by many matters. For instance, a good rainfall or a poor rainfall. The question is about policies and their implementation. I don't think that is going to change, because those flow from the character of this government, and that is the problem.
Which is what, according to you? What is the biggest problem in the character?
No, I think one feature, of course, is that there is a government of 2.5 persons. Modi, Amit Shah, and one sort of in-house lawyer who probably gets a brief every morning कि भाई आज इसको defend करना है, कल उसको deflect करना है, and that's what he spends his day doing. That's the government. They don't have the expertise, and they have surrounded themselves by persons who do not have the expertise. So therefore, they are now in a very sort of sealed echo chamber of just 2.5 persons. They don't hear what is going on. After all, the distress of which the Reserve Bank has now documented of the small and medium enterprises, those poor fellows have been shouting and clamoring for a long time. Nobody heard them. But अब मोहन जी ने कह दिया,
अब तो सुनना पड़ेगा.
अब तो सुनना पड़ेगा. So immediately government says, yes, now we will tweak it. Maybe we will get one rate. Maybe we will do something special for this, that and the other. Is that the way a government functions?
I'm going to come to that in a little more detail, but let me ask you, Mr. Yashwant Sinha spoke out last week and he said, you know, I would be failing in my national duty if I did not speak up. Now, you have spoken on the economy, I think, after many weeks. You haven't, you know, many months, in fact. BJP sources at that time, just last week, really attacked Mr. Sinha and you. They said, Arun Shouri and Yashwant Sinha are criticizing us out of frustration. Yeah. And I see that's brought a smile to your face. But how would you sort of look at that criticism?
This is their standard operating procedure. When they are confronted by inconvenient facts, they try to bury them in an avalanche of abuse. So, I have a constructive suggestion in this. You know, they should actually publish a list in advance of the persons who are frustrated. At least we will then know whose views we may not spend time in trying to study. It is always a retrospective appellation. तब उनको याद आता नहीं यार वो तो frustrated आदमी, तो जो चुप बैठे हैं हम कहें कि भाई वो तो frightened आदमी है. So is that the way to discuss things? The question is that Yashwant Sinha, Chidambaram, every economist, they have been talking about the facts. Those facts emerge from official reports of the Economic Survey. Finance Ministry publishes it. The Reserve Bank of India surveys.
Or the SBI's report.
SBI's report. So, all this is to be discounted.
You know, when you talk about this,
and we can go through. I mean, are what is being said based on facts or not? Is it a fact or not that the GDP has collapsed to 3.7% according to the old series? Is it a fact or not that the index of industrial production has gone down from about 9% in 2015-16 to now about 1.7% in April to July? That is not, the manufacturing has gone down to that. And in July, it was 0.1% growth. That is not a matter of concern. Bad loans. Do you know, when in March 2014, when the government came into office, and I had alerted Mr. Modi personally to this growing problem, because Uday Kotak and all had been speaking about it. And at that time, the bad loans were 2.5 lakhs. Today, along with these restructured, so-called restructured loans, which are really bad loans, they are 12 lakhs. At that time, they were about 7 to 8% of total outstandings. Now they are 17% as an underestimate. So, are you not going to be worried about those things?
But Mr. Shouri, let me ask you, we actually saw growth beginning to slow down before demonetization was announced. That's when you could see that there was a decline, and then of course we've seen a sharp decline after that. Why do you think the Prime Minister went in for demonetization, if that was the case?
Because if I may recall what we had talked of earlier, this is government by ilham, by revelation. रात को ilham आता है, किसी ने कह दिया, अरे demonetization. And Nidhi comes and says, in any case it was a bold step. So I had to remind you that suicide is a bold step, jumping into a well is a bold step. But those are the arguments. Which argument today survives? Black money, all of it turned into white. Terrorism, you are just now having a report of terrorists keep coming in. Naxalite financing. So which is the rationalization which they kept shifting every week? In the end, they had nothing to say. And look at the...
They say they benefited politically, which they did in Uttar Pradesh.
So you mean to say you are going to finish 86% of the currency of the country to benefit politically? That's your sense of responsibility?
But when you
How
talk...
strange. Then please talk about your political stratagems, not about economic policy.
When you talk about the echo chambers, okay, Amit Shah has called the slow growth of the economy as a technical issue. What did you think about that?
Yes, who said it?
Amit Shah, the BJP president.
That famous economist. Technical issue. Last time he said, "Arey, ignore the Prime Minister's solemn promise. वो तो जुमला था." Now he says, ignore official figures. They are just official figures, technical चीजें हैं. Actually, he is half right. It is a technical matter, and the technical matter actually works the other way. The exaggerated notions that we have been fed about the growth rate of 8%, 7.5%, they are the technical matter because of the new series.
So you're saying the other way around?
No, yes, and I'll tell you the proof of that. If you please go back to when the new series was introduced, they said, the department said, the government said, I think they said in Parliament also, I'm not sure about that, but they certainly said that we will redo the old years, the earlier years, by the new method of calculation and present the results in just a few months. A few years have gone by and they have not presented those, because if they did that, it would show that the earlier rates were even higher. So that itself shows that yes, Amit Shah is right, it is a technical matter.
But if the Prime Minister wasn't willing to listen to advice, why has he set up an Economic Advisory Council? It's just been set up a few days ago. Obviously, he recognizes that there is a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Very interesting. What was the Niti Aayog supposed to be? A think tank. What happened to that think tank? It tanked, is it? Now you have to set up a new advisory council. And who are the 2 permanent members?
One of them is Bibek Debroy.
Oh yes, my good friend. He was in the Niti Aayog. And who is going to be the member secretary of this? Again taken from the Niti Aayog.
So what was the need for a separate council?
No. The question really is, what is the advice that this body will now be able to give to the Prime Minister, which these fellows could not give from Niti Aayog?
So why did he set it up?
I think because he heard कि लोग कहते हैं कि मैं advice नहीं सुनता, तो इसलिए एक economic advisory council बना दूं.
To show
After all, they were taking credit for abolishing the council. Now they are taking credit for setting it up. Kamal.
But do you think that something will change now that they've been alerted to the state of the economy? The numbers are there, as you say. Arun Jaitley has gone on record to say that 5.7% is a concern. Do you think something will change?
I don't think so, Nidhi, because this is everything that is happening flows from the nature of the government. I mentioned to you just one feature of this 2.5 business, and this business of their core competences, event management, deflecting the news. आज कोई बुरी news आ जाए about, let's say, from the Reserve Bank, about small and medium, then start something else by the afternoon news cycle. That's their core competence, and they are so self-satisfied with it because they are in this very small chamber, and it is now an impenetrable fog of self-satisfaction. They are just meeting each other, they are not listening, they don't have expertise, they are too much of a complex to find experts who know more about them and know about the subject than anybody else. And I think there are 3 other features which will prevent any change. One is, ये एक ढीठ सरकार है. क्या कहा? We are not ready for implementing GST. अभी करते हैं. तो फिर 3 महीने में chaos होता है. And second was a point very well put by Sanjeev Ahluwalia, Montic's brother. He said that there is a symptom of hubris. That symptom is that you are so swept away by your grand visions that these mundane things, footbridge, maintenance of rail track, अरे भैया मैं electric train की सोच रहा हूँ. So you don't attend to the mundane day-to-day tasks, which is what is happening, because you have convinced yourself you are concerned about 300-foot statue, a bullet train, this, that, and the other. And third, if I may put it, there is a feature of an absolute ruler. You see this in Erdogan, you see that in Chavez in Venezuela. I think we probably see it here. You know, if a leader utters a truth and tells all his party, go and propagate this truth. So no matter, everybody goes and propagates the truth. No power of his. That's not a demonstration of his power. But if he utters a complete lie, a complete fabrication, and then tells the party people, go and propagate it. Demonetization was good. It was good for the poor. It has never been done before. And those poor fellows go and do it. Then he knows that he is powerful. That is the miasma in which the government is caught.
You think Mr. Modi is authoritarian? Is
Of
that
course,
where it stems from?
Yes, it certainly stems from that.
And you agree with Yashwant Sinha then that a large number of people in the BJP agree with him and you on the state of the economy but are scared to speak out?
Yeah, I certainly think that. Mr. Yashwant Sinha seems to have said that people, when he was asked, are they in touch with you, and he probably wanted to protect them and said they are not in touch with him. I can tell you they are in touch with him, and even with a small person like me, we've all been together, and we do learn about these things, that in the party meeting, as he has said, you could raise any issue and the minister there would have to answer on Tuesdays. That's not the case now. I know of a particular MP who tried to raise a question and the force with which he was put down. So it is just now announcements.
But can I ask you, Mr. Shouri, what would you prescribe as the three most important things, or the two most important things that need to be done right now? Do you think things are going to get any better? I come back to that question for the economy and even policy management. I know you're not very hopeful that policies will necessarily change, but if things are going to get worse, as you seem to suggest, then what do we do?
I think then yes, things will get worse because they flow from the character of this government, and therefore we better prepare ourselves for that situation. For instance, the media, they will become even more repressive in regard to the media, talking to your advertisers. Prime Minister was very upset seeing your advertisement on Indian Express or Hindu or NDTV or something. Unko patronize kar rahe ho? Prime Minister was very upset. Now, which advertiser is going to have access to the Prime Minister, or even going to have the daring to ask the Prime Minister, Bhaiya, are you upset with my advertisement? No.
You think the media is being intimidated?
Intimidated, of course. Do you think that this murder does not have a chilling effect? As the Supreme Court's phrase, or the chilling effect on free speech. And I can leave your mouth open, and this is again a Supreme Court phrase, but I've choked your throat by telling your advertisers don't advertise. So all this is happening, and it is not just in Delhi. Please don't think only of the central government. This model is being replicated down the line. You look at the number of RTI activists who have been killed. You look at the rationalists who have been killed. You look at Gauri Lankesh, and everybody is saying, oh, Prime Minister is silent. But there is a pattern to this. Why don't people see the pattern? Actually, I feel the people see the pattern now. So, you have to prepare yourselves for a situation in which the objective situation, say regarding the economy, gets worse, and therefore the government turns even more to the instruments which it has mastered, suborning the media, frightening it, and the sequence is the same. Some allegations, raid, some cases, and then take over at 1 rupee for an airline.
Well, you have not been very subtle about that, Mr. Shouri, but let me ask you, on the state of the media before I ask you the last question. Is it that today the media is far more pliant also and not asking enough questions? And that's the bottom line, whether it's television, whether it's newspapers, or do you still hold out hope that there are institutions that are asking difficult questions? I ask you this as an editor.
Actually, if you look at the media as a whole, then Advaniji's description of it during the emergency comes true again. Asked to bend, they chose to crawl. Itna darne ki kya baat hai? Because what the journalists say in private and what is happening on their channels or in their newspapers is completely worlds apart. We must be true to our professions. And that would be my appeal, not just to journalists, but to all professionals. Our job is not to be the Albert Speers.
Or the cheerleaders, or anybody.
Because you are asked to design a great Reichstag building, you design a great building. You are asked to design a gas chamber, you design that very well. Is that our job? No. We must have a non-cooperation when you see that the character of the regime as a whole is one that will harm the country.
Finally, Mr. Shouri, on the economy, what should the government, what should the Prime Minister do?
We can talk about banks and GST, and I'd have many suggestions on that, but the main points...
Give us a couple of them.
Well, the main points are not those, Nidhi. When we talk another time, I'll go into those details. The first point is predictability of policy. It's very necessary for investors, so that today the feeling is that this sarkar kuch bhi kar sakti hai, anything. Which is Muhammad Tughlaq. He says, go to Daulatabad. He says, come back from Daulatabad. So we don't know. This is what is happening, for instance, this is the lasting effect of demonetization. The second is stability. Policies must be stable. And that is why this GST business of bad implementation is not just bad implementation.
It has a long-term impact.
Long-term impact, because people say, yaar, inko pata nahi kya karna hai. Aaj rule ye hai, kal rule wo hoga. Now suddenly the finance minister, after Mohan ji has spoken, said, nahi, hum rate kam kar denge. एक रेट ले आएंगे, कैटेगरीज को कम कर देंगे. हाँ, SME मीडियम scale enterprises के लिए कुछ करेंगे. So then again the whole thing will change. So the stability. Third, and much more important, I would say, is credibility. Truth. You must stay by truth. This is an early habit of the Prime Minister. I've had to, sort of tell him in person when I used to meet him. I don't know if you remember an early interview of his, in which he's asked कि आपके क्या क्या शौक थे. तो he said कि ट्रैकिंग का बहुत शौक था. उन्होंने कहा कि आपका पहाड़ों के साथ बहुत प्रेम था. हाँ, he said मैं पहाड़ों में बहुत शांति होती है, ये होता है, मैं बहुत ट्रैकिंग करता था. उसने कहा आप बहुत ऊंचा भी गए होंगे. He said हाँ 25,000 फुट तक. 25,000
I don't remember this.
अरे मतलब टहलते टहलते चप्पलों में 25,000 फुट पहुंच गए. Do you know how many peaks there are in India which are 25,000 feet or above? Do you know?
No, I don't actually. No, honestly. And 25,000 as well.
So do you know? You should ask somebody. I don't think he knew at that time. It's not Everest, that's Nepal. It's not K2 or Nanga Parbat, that is Pakistan. So which Indian
peak was it?
Yes. There's one peak. It will be very good to know if he knew at that time. And if he had climbed that peak at that time in 25,000 feet, my friend, then it would certainly be registered in the annals of the Indian Mountaineering Institute in Darjeeling, because it was Kanchenjunga. So this is a habit. And I can give you several personal examples from this. Therefore, this has now become the leitmotif of the government as a whole. You know, all official data was showing what you were saying about job losses. The Center for the Monitoring of Indian Economy says that in January to April, 1.5 million jobs were lost.
Yes, right after demonetization.
Okay, but just day before yesterday, there were full-page ads that Mudra has created 5.5 crore jobs. Arre, why are they not reflected in any survey of any government department? So therefore, what is happening, I was told this to my face in Singapore just in February, that, sir, I made some remark about Chinese data. They said, sir, you are out of date. Chinese data today is credible, but the data of India is not now believed. So truth is very important, but I would put one thing above everything that applies to all these fellows. It should apply to us also. We must remember that in the end, cleverness does not pay. And if you permit, I'll give a Sufi story on that.
I'll let you end with that Sufi story.
It is in a book by a wonderful writer called Idris Shah, who popularized Sufism in the 20th century in the West. You know, this Sufi master, like Saint Francis of Assisi, he knew the language of birds and animals. So one man was pestering him all the time. Sir, please teach it to me. Master, please teach it to me. Sir, aap nahi batlayenge to kaun batlayega, etc. In the end, the master got so fed up. He said, it's not good for you. He said, sir, no, but please teach me. So he taught him. So one day, the fellow heard, feeding his animals, he heard the dog tell the cock, you see the master's horse? See his right leg shaking? He will die 3 days hence. Arre, my horse is dying 3 days from now. He rushed to the market, sold the horse died. He was so happy, he had made his money, saved his money. So a few days later, he heard the dog tell the cock, do you see that master's donkey? See his right leg shaking? He will die in 3 days. Arre, my donkey is dying. He rushed to the market, sold the donkey. The donkey died. He was so happy and so clever. See, I made money, I saved money. A few days later, he heard the dog tell the cock, you see the master? You see his right leg shaking? He will die in 3 days. He said, what? I will die in 3 days? He rushed to the master. He says, this damn dog is saying, I will die in 3 days. What should I do? He says, now go and sell yourself. That is the condition of everyone. In the end, cleverness does not pay. Taking advantage of others does not pay. And that would be my counsel to the Prime Minister as a friend. His failure will be the failure of India. A great opportunity would have been missed. So please don't rely on cleverness or on clever people. Speak the truth. The people will understand. That's what I would like to tell them.
Well, Mr. Shouri, always a pleasure to talk to you. You are as blunt as ever. I don't know if Mr. Modi or his government will necessarily see you as a friend, although you say you're giving them friendly advice. But it would be interesting to see how they react to everything that you said this evening. Thank you, Mr. Shouri. Thank you for coming in.